Well, they were kind of thinking of it, and I think some parents were suggesting it and looking at it and wondering about it. It started out by having just some group sessions with the middle schoolers. Um, and then they asked me to take over the middle school, which at the time, when it first started, was down the hall, down the basement here, in the military.
We had these 3 small classrooms on the military, and plus you're running in and out of the classrooms, and yet a lot of the upper school kids, we really couldn't be on our own.
Worst possible place, noisy, dusty, dirty, between the rifle range.
My room was right next to the rifle range. It was, when they were shooting the rifles down there, it just, you had to come up with a different lesson plan.
Just put a few high school teachers down there, and some of them were very good, got it off to a good start.
I started in 1974, and when I came in here, the middle school, there was not a division between 7th and 8th grade. It was divided by their talent in class. So we had 3 sections, and so it was a 2-year program that we had a plan in our setting up our classes. I taught both social studies and art history and religion. Dave Johnson was math and science, and John Owens was English and basic skills. That was how we started. 3 sections of kids based on their ability in class.
And then they needed more space. We still had border students. And they were from Central America, Mexico, all those countries, plus around Minnesota, far out in the state, because there weren't any big Catholic high schools out there, and there weren't any roads, so it was easier to bring them here. So we had a lot of 5-day boarders. The parents would bring them in on Sunday night, leave them here, and would pick them up on Friday afternoon. So that was another development there until all these freeways got in. At the time, border students were in decline, especially from foreign countries and even outstate Minnesota. So those 2 buildings were rented out to Marriage Encounter for their weekend retreats, which worked out fine because they had 2 big rooms on the basement level of each building and all the bedrooms on the 1st and 2nd floor. And they would come every weekend. So we decided to share the property with them, not the bedrooms, but those 4 classrooms on the lower level.
And that way we had our own little program, and we took over both levels, the lower levels of the dormitories. Our numbers had grown to 4 or 5 sections. We needed to expand. We also came up, the teachers said, let's go to a 7th grade and an 8th grade.
There were a couple problems. One thing was on Friday afternoon, everything had to be taken down off the walls of those big rooms for their discussions, because they put up all their stuff. And then it all had to be put back up by Monday morning for classes again. And if you remember Mr. Tom Weber, he had the wall just full of stuff all over the place. It took him all day to take it down and all day to put it back up. Another problem was the distance from down there to up here, especially in the wintertime. It would snow and there'd be tons of snow on the hill, and it didn't bother the kids at all. The bell would ring and they'd scamper up there. And we old fogies would put on our rover shoes and make our way up. And by the time we got up here to the cafeteria, they were done eating and they were raising hell in the cafeteria.
Another thing I had to deal with is that they would take the lunch trays, and on the way back down they'd slide down the hill. And at that time, there were still cars parked down there. And I said, hey, somebody's going to get hurt. Oh, we slide between the cars. One thing the kids liked, they could go out for a recess out in the front there. It always bothered me when the lake started freezing over and some of these kids decided to test the ice. I had to be out there to make sure they didn't get out there. And that's what we did. And it was all right having our own little more space, but if you look at those rooms down there, they were not built for classrooms. Small and skinny, and sometimes we jammed them all into one classroom. Just so we could all talk to them, because if some issues came up, you need to pull them together and talk about it. This is not a proper thing to do, or this is what we're going to be doing. And trying to pull them all together to go over some basic things was difficult. If we had a huge thing to do, they'd have to get up here and use the gym or some facility like that. And the dormitory gave us that little of our own school, and yet we came up with the formations and activities and the lunch, and so the kids could see what it would be like to get up in the high school. But we found out that those classrooms were the best.
So that was not the best situation either. And that's when they started planning a separate building up here, connected for middle school.
Very beautiful section with classrooms. It was ideally for the middle school to be. I always say the middle school is kind of a school within a school. They get to see what the upper school does all the time, going up to formation and all the other special activities. But yet we got a section where we can do our own type of things. And that's where we started adding the music program, the theater program, sports program, student council. And it turned out to be a great way for these young men to be prepared for the high school.